I'm back, boob too. What caused then a global pandemic to post more videos, like I said yesterday. So today, I'm going to do my next Bill 69 entry in the series. There's lots more of these to come. I hope to do one at this point every every other or every third day, because I've got the blogs all typed out over the years. I just need to kind of refamiliarize myself with each game and find the time to record the video. So this third entry that I did for Bill 69 was that the original blog was posted back on February 20th, 2014, and featured 3 more games. The first one, and I know I've said this over the first 2 entries here, that there's a number of my very favorite games included in these first couple entries, and this one is no different. The first game in this trio is one of my all-time favorite games. It was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988, and it is called Jackal. It came from Konami, and after Capcom, Konami's probably arguably one of my very favorite developers, especially back in the day and those original platform games. It takes place in sort of... It starts off in the jungle. You control an army jeep that has one guy driving and one guy shooting from the back the weapons, and you can play 1 player or 2 player. And as I said, me and Simon and all of our friends growing up, we loved the 2-player co-op games. That was our bread and butter. If we could pick a single-player game versus a 2-player game, 99 times out of 100 we're playing the 2-player game together, sort of thing. So this game is super fun because it's 2-player, and it doesn't take place, say, in any... It's not based on a historical engagement of any type. The game packaging and stuff makes it look like it's from like the 70s, like maybe a Vietnam type era sort of thing, from what I can tell. But when you face the enemies in this game, there's some classic kind of tanks and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of futuristic kind of tech that you're fighting against. So I think it's just kind of a made up mishmash of a bunch of stuff. But anyways, the story is that you control these army jeeps, and you're going into hostile territory to retrieve as many of your captured comrades as you can. I believe there's 6 total levels in the game, and as you wheel about your environment, you can... your jeep's very maneuverable. You can do these little circles, or you can move all over the place at the drop of a dime. So it's very maneuverable, and you can fire your machine guns, which always fires straight ahead towards the top of the screen. Or you can fire your grenades, which you can fire in any of the 8 kind of directions, whichever way you're pointing. And as you go, you can pick up upgrades that will turn your grenades into missiles. And as you upgrade them further, they have this area effect, so you can kill more people in the explosion. So there's different things that go into it. And as you go through each level, you will come upon these little kind of wooden huts, and when you explode them, your captured comrades will come streaming out, and you go drive up, they load into your jeep, and then you take them to there's always a helipad somewhere near the end or mid to end of the level, and you can drop all your comrades off at the helipad, and the helicopter will take them to safety. If you get killed along the way, you lose some of those men. You can reclaim some of them, but they go less and less with each time you die. So and of course, the more guys you drop off, the more points you get, the more free lives you earn. So it pays to be accurate and safe and good at the game to progress through it. The enemies you'll face, there's tanks, there's other jeeps, there's guys on foot shooting guns and missiles at you, there's helicopters, airplanes, submarines, boats, all sorts of stuff. And then the bosses you face are kind of varied. There's a big battleship you face one time, there's a big tank, there's like these ancient statues, they look like, that the mouths open up and they fire heat-seeking missiles at you. There's big compounds, you have to destroy different aspects of it before you can enter it. So there's a bit of variation on everything, and this is a game that can be played in a short amount of time. It's a ton of fun. It's 2-player co-op, and it's easy enough that you could beat it most times as long as you're dialed in and performing well. If you're not kind of feeling it and not quite into it, you can die very easily. But if you're having a good round and you're buckling down, you should be able to beat it most times. So it's like easy but not easy. It's challenging enough on the easy end of the spectrum that you do have to, you know, give it some significant effort and be locked in order to complete the game. So that's Jackal is like, if you looked at my cartridges up here, you'd look at them and go, "Oh, that one's pretty well worn. Like it's got some miles on it." So that's one of the ones that is, you know, easily the most identifiably used of my collection. So, next up was a Super Nintendo title released in 1991, and it's the third game in the Ghosts and Goblins series. It is called Super Ghouls and Ghosts. This game is tremendously difficult. I never had any of these series from when I was a kid, but I did play them on occasion in the arcade. And Simon always had these games because they're in his wheelhouse. They're one of his favorite series, so we always played it at his house too. But we never got very far. Like I don't know how far we got, how far I remember getting into it, but maybe the first few levels. Overall, there's 7 levels. They are extremely difficult. And you have a little map along the bottom as you go that kind of helps you identify where you are. And the story behind it is that you play a knight named Arthur, as you usually do. The princess has been captured by this villain. I forget his name. It's like Sorius or some ancient kind of sounding medieval name. And the reason he's captured the princess is that she holds a bracelet that is the only thing that is capable of destroying him. So you want to go reclaim the princess, get the bracelet, and dispatch this villain in the end to save the day. So as you go through each level, there's all sorts of different minor opponents. There's, you know, goblins, of course, gargoyles, ghosts, werewolves, bats. You know, the standard kind of medieval horror genre that is typical to this series. And then as you reach the end of each level, there's always a boss, and the bosses in this game are just bigger, badder, different versions of these type of nightmare creatures that you'll face. And so then if you can make it through all 7 levels and defeat the head bad guy, you'll win and save the day. And like I said, this game is just tremendously hard. We never got far on it as kids, like I mentioned, and me and Simon, the reason our blog posts were so sparsely attached to each other in those early days of our Bill 69 quest is that we chose some really hard games in the early going, which made it really difficult to get completions done. So you know, Kid Chameleon I mentioned last time around was a really hard finish, and there was a couple other ones as well that were tough, but this one was just as tough as any of the others, probably the hardest up to this point that we had managed. So it took us quite a few numbers of game nights to eventually get it done and get to the end and finally beat it. But that just made it even more worth it. You know, these games you play as a kid that seem so impossible, that you never even got to explore over half the game because you couldn't get that far. To go back as an adult and beat them all these years later is so satisfying. It's like this whole purpose in your life has finally been completed, right? Like, not that it's a purpose, but it's something, you know, you've you know, as massive video game lovers that me and Simon are, to go back and finally complete some of these super hard games, it's just like, it's a great amount of relief and satisfaction. So the last game in this trifecta is another one that's kind of like Jackal. It's like, if you dial in, you can beat it 9 times out of 10, you know, if you're trying hard enough. But if you're not in the mood and you're not performing well, you'll get your ass handed to you, no problem. This game was released for the Sega Genesis in 1989, and it's probably one of the most recognizable games and familiar games for people over the years that they would have seen for the Genesis system, and it is called Altered Beast. In Altered Beast, you play a fallen warrior, or warriors, because it's 2-player co-op, just like Jackal, who are resurrected by the head of the Greek gods, Zeus, to go and track down his kidnapped daughter, the goddess Athena. I think it was Athena, yeah. So you set about, in this game, and you face these, it's Greek god times, so the creatures you face are unlike anything that actually exist in the real world. There's all these freakish nightmare mutant creatures that you must face down, and I don't even know how to classify them because they're not real, right? So, but as you progress through the game, you'll face all these creatures as you move through each level, and at the end of each level, a kind of the head boss that you're fighting against almost looks like, remember from the Addams Family, Uncle Fester, with the guy with the bald head and the dark eyes and stuff. He looks exactly like him. He'll show up at the end of the level and say "Welcome to your doom" or something like that, and then he'll transform into some mutant friggin' nightmare creature that you then have to take down as the boss. Now, getting through the game, you're just a regular warrior dude, so you're up against all these mystical forces. So Zeus has given you the power to, if you collect these orbs throughout the level, you can transform into a certain type of animal in each level, which grants you much more power than you have in your regular human form, and all these different abilities. So it starts off, I think in the first level you can turn into a werewolf, and then it's like a dragon, a bear, a tiger, and then a werewolf again for the last level. There's 5 total levels, and it may not be exactly in that order, but I think that's right. And then so it's really important, just like in Jackal, when you gain the power-ups for your grenades, turning them into the missiles that have the area effect that just make your life so much easier in dispatching enemies. It's the same thing in Altered Beast. Once you get into your animal form, you want to be as careful as possible and not get hit and not lose your animal form, because it just makes everything so much easier when you are with those extra powers. So if you can, stay safe, master your powers, complete all the levels, beat down Uncle Fester 5 times, you will have rescued Athena, pleased the god Zeus, and completed the game. So yeah, so those are the 3 games that we got up to back in the early going of 2014, and I'm assuming the latter going of 2013, because Super Ghouls and Ghosts had us going for weeks and months. So yeah, that was a really fun blog to write and a really fun completion to do, because we had played Jackal as kids all the time. Whenever Simon and his brother Josh and my cousins came over to my place, which we did a lot, because those sets of friends and cousins, we were all close with each other, and whenever it was any of our parents' birthdays or whatever like that, or different occasions throughout the year, Thanksgivings, Christmases, all that stuff, we saw each other a lot during the year. So depending on whose house we were at dictated what games we would play and stuff like that. So, but whenever we were at my place, Jackal would always come up at some point during the night. And everybody loved playing that game. So, and we beat it as kids too. It wasn't a big surprise that we beat it this time. So, but it was fun to play that game again, because it's just so much fun. And then Super Ghouls and Ghosts was just such a fun completion, because it was so hard and took us so long to do, and was something we didn't come within a sniff of as kids. And then Altered Beast was again another game as kids. We didn't beat it as often as Jackal, but we did beat it a couple times, and it's just another one of those nostalgic games that we grew up playing, and we got to get at all these years later again and relive it and complete it. And yeah, so it was a really fun blog post to complete those 3 different games. But I'm finding, as I'm going back through these, every blog post is fun in some degree, because each of these games so far, with the exception of maybe River City Ransom, because we didn't play that as kids, but most of these games we've played so far are games that we dabbled with to different degrees as kids, and really love. So every blog's a little bit special for revisiting our youth. I'm a big nostalgic guy. Like I never kind of grew up, so my youth was probably the favorite time of my life, right? Like growing up as a kid, I had a lot of fun, and so I look back on it very fondly. So kind of anything to spark that nostalgia factor and relive my childhood always goes a long way for me. I love it. So yeah, it's fun to go back through all these games and then share them with everybody. And I hope for anybody who does watch this, who, oh, a bird just crashed into the window. for anybody that's watching this that is a big gaming fan and may not be familiar with older games, and maybe younger and that grew up with more of the newer consoles, it's so easy to get old games now. You can download them in so many different ways, from what I've been told, that all of these games that I'm mentioning in these blogs are like all worth the play. So just go out and explore and play old games, because they are so much fun. And in many ways, they're way better than new games. I mean, new games have all these complicated storylines and these amazing graphics, but they're still not, to me anyways, they're not as fun as the old games. Sometimes simpler is better, you know, less is more sort of thing. So, anyways, I'm rambling. I do that. So until the next day or two, I should have another one of these in the very near future. But until then, have a great rest of the week, and we will see you soon.